Hello lovely people, and welcome back to this week's new video. I'm here with a smasher pass for the one and only Mina Reads. I'm kind of cutting it close as I usually am with these videos, but this week is Mina's birthday week. So I thought it would be perfect to upload this video then. So happy birthday week to Mina, happy birthday month, happy birthday in general. Mina is such a hilarious individual and I love her videos for that. She is just a really great uplifting person. She helped me reach a milestone here on YouTube, for which I am very, very grateful. It felt only right to do this video in which I read Mina's favorite books. I read 5 books as I usually do. I actually own all of them except for one of them. I returned to the library. Jade City, Something Like Love, City of Brass, and Xeni, and also The Wicker King by Ancrum. Let's just get into seeing how I did. Mina is very well known for loving smutty romance here on booktube. Specifically, I feel like indie published romance, which has been really awesome for me to explore a lot of new authors. But recently, I think more recently, she's been getting into fantasy and exploring that on her channel as well, which is pretty awesome for me because that's something that I have been trying to do as well. Fantasy is something that I not necessarily stay away from, but that and sci-fi I haven't read much of, and so it felt actually perfect to read more fantasy specifically for this. But let's see how I did with this video. The Wicker King is about August and Jack, 2 boys in senior year of high school, I believe, or like junior year. August learns that his friend is showing signs of degenerative hallucinatory disorder, and he is helping his friend cope with that, and they are very untrusting of adults, and so they are very wary of trying to ask for help. Jack, his hallucinations are causing him to form an elaborate fantasy in which he is the ruler of a world as the Wicker King. He needs to fulfill this quest into this alternate world where August is trying to determine whether or not it's actually real, because Jack is detailing it so well with all of these different drawings and whatnot. August is helping Jack, who is struggling to stay afloat. In the end, he needs to figure out what is his own truth. I actually lost the footage of my time reading this. I have no idea when I deleted it, so it's gone. My final rating for this book, I believe, was a 4-star. I struggle with magical realism because it seems so rooted in my own real world, whereas like with high fantasy I have no choice but to accept that as the reality. But in this case, I think for the Wicker King, it was really interesting because I would be in the position as August trying to see whether or not I believe Jack, and I think that's why I enjoyed it more than I have with other magical realism stories. The cool part about this book, I wish that I could show you, is that as Jack withers down in his mental state, the pages turn darker and darker. So it starts off as like the regular white pages, and then it turns gray into eventually black. Ancrum had this really gorgeous message at the end about kids who need help, who are struggling to find help, especially because they don't feel like the adults would understand them, and that she understands and she's there for them. And I thought that was a really nice message to have to her young readers. The second book that I read is Jade City by Fonda Lee, which is a high fantasy novel, which had a pretty modern society, being that usually I'm used to fantasy worlds that are sort of like more ancient. There's no technology or anything like that. In this one, there exists cars, planes, and a whole different universe, it seems like. This one specifically takes place on an island called Kuang, and there are green bone warriors who use jade to enhance their abilities. Their job was to protect this small island from foreign invasion. There was a war called the Many Nations War that included like their whole world. That is long over, and on this island of Kuang there are 2 strong clans who are rivals, the Mountain Clan and the No Peak Clan. Although there has been like this sort of peace, this war is sort of looming over them because the peace talks are just not really successful anymore, and that's what the story is following. I believe the 3rd book actually in the series, Jade Legacy, is coming out. Now that I'm 100 pages into Jade City, I'm starting to get a grasp of what's going on in this world. It's definitely a different sort of fantasy than the Poppy War, which I read recently, which I think Mina really likes as well. This is a fantasy. She's a thick one. Also, it rained incredibly heavily yesterday. I got caught in it. There was like no point in having an umbrella, so now my new copy of Jade City is like warped. so that's why she looks like that. So 100 pages in, the Mountain Clan has a proposal for Andon. That's where I'm at, and like I said, I'm sort of starting to understand what's going on and the hierarchy, the meaning of them. There are still a lot of characters, but I think I'm starting to sort of catch on to what's going on. I have to leave actually in like 45 minutes, and I'm hoping to finish this even though it's like less than 100 pages. So I don't know, I might just start a new book for the train ride and then finish this when I get home because I have a dinner to get to. It's rating at like 3 stars, which is really average for a fantasy book for me, but I think I'm having a harder time because I keep comparing it to the Poppy War because that was the most recent high fantasy book that I read, but there was a main character that I could connect to, Rin, whereas in this one there's a whole clan, and the family is the one that you're supposed to connect to, but there's not like one person that I'm like really identifying with. But I am, like, obviously since I'm almost finished with it, I'm getting into it. The impending war is like exciting and nerve-wracking and very terrifying because the Jade is so very powerful. You can perceive someone's aura, so basically you can sense when someone is getting angry and their emotions. You can sense if they're close to you. That is really incredible, and it definitely heightens a lot of your emotions and strengths, I guess. So you really just have to be like an absolute warrior, which I think is really cool. I do want to continue the series. It's very intricate, and that's why I would. Most likely I will give the second book a higher rating. Great start. That sounded really insincere, but seriously, I am liking this book. I finished this last night and I decided I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. The boost at the end was because of how I felt for Andon at the end, and because this does include extras at the gray part, if you can see that. So I read a little snippet of the second book right away because I wanted to know if there would be any sort of detail surrounding what is going to happen next, and there was. I definitely am interested in continuing this series and seeing what happens because the war is not over. A lot of things are still up in the air of what's going to happen. So far of who I like, it's obviously Andon. I mean, we love the underdog here, but Shay is also starting to grow on me. I feel like there's not a lot to know about her, but I do like her. And Wen is an interesting character. Hilo is just so arrogant, and he's too much of like an up and down character for me, and I know people like that who are similar to him in real life that I don't like and don't get along with. We'll see. But I did like this. I know that the other fantasy book that I have is also really chunky. I mean, rightfully so, with so much world building. It's great for turning me on to a new fantasy series, so yay, 3.5. Something Like Love by Christina C. Jones was up next. This is an indie published romance, and this is following Eddie and Astrid. Astrid works in a yoga studio, and on that same street or block or vicinity, Eddie owns a tattoo parlor. There's about a 10-ish year age gap. Eddie finds Astrid's perky personality to just be too much for him. He can't handle this young person energy, but obviously there's some sort of an attraction. Is it a romance? And although they're opposites, they're actually find out that there's a little bit more in common between them. This is the 6th book in a series, so my thing about it was that I didn't really understand the side characters because I felt like they were sort of unnecessary. So if you think that you might feel that way, probably start with the other books in the series, although it's not necessary because they're just companion books. We hate Amazon here. Yeah, I haven't used Amazon in about almost a year until this video because Mina likes indie published authors, which is really amazing, but the non-amazing part is that self-published books are typically only found through Amazon for me because I don't really like ebooks. The last book finally arrived, so we're gonna do a little bit of a book haul, even though you'll fucking see it later. The last book that I have, which you already know, is Something Like Love. It's actually book 6, I think, but I believe that they can all be read separately. Like, you can tell this is indie published. I finished this a few days ago, and I was under the impression that I had done a midway check-in for this, and I didn't even say that I had started it. I'm giving this, I think, a 3.5 because I do like Astrid and Eddie. Similar to Eddie, Astrid is someone who would definitely annoy me. She's just a little bit perky too often for my taste, and I thought their dynamic was really funny, although I wish it was a little bit more clear like why he was annoyed of her. That understanding I wasn't really seeing, but the smut is really great, and I like that this is indie published, so I think I will be looking into more of Christina C. Jones' books because she has published many romance novels. Because these two were mostly just kind of like a fling, like friends with benefits sort of situation, and I could see that connection gradually growing, which I really enjoyed. The conflict was like legitimate. It's just a lot of miscommunication, and it didn't bother me like the third act breakup type of situation didn't bother me as it typically would, because I totally understood why Astrid was getting upset, and it wasn't clear, and having that conversation between two people can be a little bit complicated and nerve-wracking. Something was missing. Maybe it's because this book just isn't really that long. I kind of wanted more to happen. Honestly, maybe I'm giving it a 4-star. That's like not a lot for me to dock that many points, you know. We're going 4 stars. We're giving 4 stars. I'm just sort of a little all over the place because I finished this a couple days ago and I shouldn't have left my review for this long, but I also am really interested in knowing about the other characters. I feel like her friends I didn't really care about because there wasn't just that much to know about them in this. I really liked Astrid's relationship with her sister. I would be interested in seeing more about them, but they're already a developed relationship, so I don't know. But I do know that this is a series, so maybe that would have changed had I read the other books first. I needed to split up the fantasies, so that's why I had a romance, and the next book was City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This book is taking place in 18th century Cairo. Our main character Nari was, or is, a con woman. She is a con artist and she's swindling like noblemen and stuff like that until she ends up conjuring this jinn warrior who I had never really read much about. Dara, the jinn, and Nari need to flee for safety into this city called Davabad for people like her. There's like this really ancient history that Nari is learning a lot about that she doesn't really quite understand, where there are rivalries and just a lot of resentment in this one city, a city to which Nari is irrevocably bound, and where her very presence threatens to ignite a war that has been simmering for centuries. I'm over 200 pages of this and I'm really bored. I really wanted to like this because I know that this is a popular author, popular fantasy series. The premise of it is very cool, and it's not a setting that I have read before. Well, that seems obvious because, you know, I don't read much fantasy. This is taking place in 18th century Cairo. I'm fine with the world and the creatures. There's a glossary that helps me sort of decipher that, but I'm just not invested at all in the characters. I don't see any like chemistry whatever between Dara and Nari. I don't understand yet why we're getting perspective in Ali, the prince, and that royalty. I don't get why we're getting chapters in their perspective at all, and I'm really trying to hope to finish this book today because I'm behind on this video, but I'm like kind of struggling. I'm almost halfway through, you know, because this book is close to 500 pages or over 500 pages. Like, is it gonna get interesting? Oh my god. I finished City of Brass and I'm giving it 2.5 stars. 0.5 added is because the world is very cool and interesting. I still am confused, like I don't understand the difference between a deva and a jinn because the glossary makes it seem like there isn't a difference, but then when people talk about tribes it seems like there is. I don't do unhaul videos because usually when I don't like a book and I give it a low rating, I just immediately list it on my Depop or I donate it right away. But I think this one, similar to the 5th season, is one that I want to revisit because there is a part of me that is interested in reading the second story, although I'm not like itching to get to it right away as I was with like Jade City or the Poppy War. There was a lot to take in from this and it wasn't like gradually going on. I mean, I was bored for the majority of this, which is why the rating is pretty low, and I felt like it wasn't really starting to get super interesting until the last 80 pages, which is not a lot of the story. There wasn't really one character that I was connecting to that I super liked, but I'm keeping it to see if it could be something that I'm interested in, and if I do the reread and I still don't like it but I kind of want to continue, there's always a library. That's where this is at. Last but not least is a romance, and this was Xeni by Rebekah Weatherspoon. Xeni's aunt has died, and she is the only one in her entire family that has been tasked to clean out her aunt's house because of some sort of feud between her aunts. In this will, Xeni discovers that she needs to be married in order for her to claim the estate, which seems kind of more like a Regency romance. Her aunt actually has someone in mind, and he is a ruggedly handsome and deliciously thick Scotsman who showed up at her aunt's memorial, bagpipes at the ready. Quickly needed to do a check-in because I'm about to finish this book in one sitting. Okay, I have read all of this just now. Okay, 168 pages, and I'm loving it so much. At first I was hesitant because this situation of a marriage of inconvenience where her aunt was like, you have to get married, was sort of like too much of a romance novel. Like it would only happen in romance novels. I've seen books where like, or situations in like movies where the person needs to be married in order to get everything in the will, but not to one specific person. So I was a little bit hesitant, but I really like Xeni, and Mason, I can already see him perfectly. Like he's described as like really burly type of person, so I'm seeing like Matt McGorry type, but with like Chris Evans' face. I don't know who else would be like so bushy in the face area. I really like them. Like obviously the attraction is immediate. I mean, it's a romance novel. Also the Scottish accent, like any accent, I'm fucking there. I can understand why Xeni's like super into it, and I feel like with her personality of being like really forward and out there was necessary in order for them to kind of strike up this relationship a lot faster than I thought they would. It's like working out really well. Like also in something like Love, Mason is bisexual. They talked a lot about their partners feeling insecure in their own sexuality and why it doesn't like work out with a lot of the other people that they're with because they're uncomfortable and fear the other sex or whatever the hell. I just want to get through this so fast because I'm really loving this. I'm like glad that I saved this to the end. So I wanted to mention that the Irish setter, I think that it's English setter that is at the farm, Honeycrisp, I love that name. And I also wanted to say that I like Sloane, and I think that the first book in the series, Rafe, is about Sloane and Rafe, so I definitely am interested in picking that up. I already looked it up on the Libby app because I'd rather like get to it right away and to see like if the audiobooks for these series are any good. Alright y'all, I finished this in one sitting, and I'm just gonna say it, super easy, 5 fucking stars. I loved this so much. Oh my god. I read the author's note, and turns out that Xeni obviously is part of Sloane's story, I think, the first book in this series, but Mason is part of a completely different series, so I think I'm gonna look into that to see more of his backstory. I love them a lot, and like everything just makes sense because you sort of have to put aside some of your reservations, I guess, in terms of believability, because this is a fiction and it's a romance novel, so you kind of have to allow things to just happen this way. And so I just really loved this book. A lot of representation in here. We love to see it. Pegging rights, as I believe Mina would say. We love it. Favorite romance of the year, I think. Although I am not entirely finished with this readathon quite yet in this moment, I didn't have like the best ratings. I actually had sort of fun because this helps me to get out of my comfort zone, which is not something I do quite often. I do love my mysteries and my thrillers and my romances, so I love that I am picking up new authors. Although City of Brass was quite confusing for me, I do still want to challenge myself to try to figure out what's going on in the other books and reread the first one as well. So I hope you'll enjoyed. Let me know if you have read any of these books and if you think that your reading taste might align better with Mina's, although mine not quite. I will still look for her recommendations. I mean, I didn't have anything like awful, and I didn't expect them to be aligned perfectly like I never would for anybody, but I had a lot of fun regardless. I will still definitely be looking to Mina for some recommendations, so I hope you all enjoyed and give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you all next time. Bye!